Hey, this is Tom Calvin. Thanks for tuning in to Tomorrow's Legends.
You think you know the story. You've heard it 100 times. But this is not the tale that you know. For this part of the story has yet to be written. Join Flash, Harley, and X-Force 11 as they take the Waverider into the near future and check in on some old friends. This is the new adventures of Superman and Lois, as chronicled by Tomorrow's Legends.
Yes, hello Super Fam. Welcome back to Tomorrow's Legends. We are here in Smallville following the new adventures of Superman and Lois, and this week we are covering Season 1, Episode 7, Man of Steel. And I am Man of Speed, the Flash.
I'm Harley Quinn.
And I'm X-Force 11.
Hello, Legends.
Yes, alright guys. Well, man, I think we're all in a bit of state of shock after what got revealed this week, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Like, excited shock, not like, whoa, what was that? It was like, holy, they gave us all of that? Wow.
Yes.
Definitely.
I'm with you. Was not expecting half of what we got, so very cool,
Yeah.
very cool.
Very cool. All right, well, let's get some news going here. X-Force got a bunch of things to tell us about.
We interrupt this podcast for a special report.
All right, take her away.
Yeah, so the CW kind of had their upfronts this week, and we got a bunch of news. So, Superman and Lois' finale date is set for August 17th. And Season 2 will be mid-season starting early 2022, is what they said. We don't yet have an episode count that I've seen for Season 2. Next bit of news, Season 7 of Legends will be moving to Wednesday nights at 8. So it'll be Legends at 8 and Batwoman at 9. And so it appears that we're going to have a kind of a short break in between seasons.
Right.
Probably not as long as more than a couple weeks, I would say. And this is my speculation. We don't know for sure, but it seems like maybe Superman and Lois may take the Legends spot when that Legends finishes in that late January time frame, because that's the only one that I can kind of see where it would fit in. Stargirl Season 2 starts August 10th, and that will have a finale somewhere in early November, and then Season 3 will air mid-season, so we don't have a firm timeline yet and no day on when that's going to happen, because The Flash is staying at 8 p.m. for their run, and so it looks like when Stargirl finishes, The Flash will start. So that's kind of where we're going there.
Okay.
And FYI, both Flash and I neither one of us will be tuning in December for the CW Bebo animated Christmas special, Bebo Saves Christmas.
Oh my God, that hurts my ears.
I know. It's...
Wow. Until I read these notes, I didn't even know that was coming, because I obviously very, very deftly avoid anything Bebo related. So even the fact that that's coming, it's like, what? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But
anyway.
Okay, so let's look at a bit of the news here. A couple questions. So when you say Superman Lois begins mid-season starting 2020, what is considered mid-season these days? Because it used to be all shows started in September. But now they have September start dates, they have February start dates, they have June start. What is mid-season for us?
Well, it kind of varies, because I think when they say mid-season for Stargirl, I'm thinking March or April, and that's traditionally more mid-season now these days.
Okay.
But I think everything is pushed back. A lot of those are pushed back because of stuff airing into the summer and late fall now, and so like I said, Flash would normally start in the beginning of September or late August, but it's more likely the beginning of September. But because you've got Stargirl airing at 8, you've got Supergirl airing at 9. Once Superman and Lois are off the air, it's pushing back the start of the season. So everything's still lagging behind because of the last 2 years because of COVID.
Right. Okay, so that's why we might have shorter breaks between this season finishing and the start of the new seasons, because they want to get back to regular scheduling, because COVID, like you said, just pushed everything back. So that's why Legends might seem like, whoa, we only have a couple months off, and then boom, we're coming back already.
Yeah, I see that as being maybe a couple weeks. So because that's the only comic book mid-season one that's starting in the fall. There's another DC show coming in that's going to start mid-season, but where are they going to schedule everything? They've got an extra day. They've got Saturdays now. Yeah. But it's just hard to look at their scheduling and say. But if you're going to go create a comic book show for a comic book show, I say take Legends finishes, Stargirl starts. So.
Cool. Well, we'll keep a closer eye on those dates. Once things get really solidified, then we'll definitely post on the Facebook page and let everyone know for sure. But yeah, I mean, we got to finish these seasons first. Oh, yeah. Yes. Lots going on, but that's good. Good to have all that kind of in the wind, so we have an idea what's coming. Now, we got some pre-show feedback, and all right, so this pre-show feedback actually came in way back during our hiatus. It's from our friend Rick Marshall, and it just got lost by the wayside in emails because it was during the hiatus, and we forgot to include it on our returning show. So we totally apologize, Rick. We're going to play it here because you're talking about episode 5, and we want to make sure, we've promised you guys we always will include everybody's feedback. So here it is about episode 5 from Rick Marshall.
Hey guys, this is Rick from Orlando with some feedback on Superman and Lois. You may recall I called into your podcast several weeks ago with some feedback on the first 2 episodes, but I was really late with that feedback. And as I mentioned, I don't watch the show in real time. I'm usually 2 to 3 weeks late in watching an episode, and by then you've already done your podcast. So that's the reason why you're not going to hear from me too often. But I did want to call in with a comment on episode 5 because there was a really big Easter egg that you guys missed, and all of your listeners who called in with feedback apparently missed it as well. Oh. And that's when Clark said that the Smallville Town Festival had been going on since 1949. And I got a real chuckle out of that because 1949 was the year that Superboy #1 was published. The first DC comic devoted to Superboy came out in 1949, and that was a big year. That was also kind of the year that a lot of people think the golden age of comics ended, because a lot of the early superhero titles like The Flash, All-American Comics, a lot of the golden age heroes had their comic books really end their run by 1949. I think the only remaining title was All-Star Comics with the Justice Society that went on for another 2 years. But by 49, the golden age was largely done, and the 50s were really dominated by Superman, Batman, and Superboy. Superboy was a major character in the comics beginning. As I said, he's got his own title in 1949. He actually made his first appearance in 1944 in More Fun Comics 101, cover dated actually I think 1945. That was the first appearance of Superboy. He then moved over to Adventure Comics in 1945, and of course he got his own title in 49. The really interesting thing about Superboy to modern readers who may not be aware of this is that Superboy was Clark Kent. The Superboy stories were the adventures of Clark Kent when he was a kid. And what they did was they really rewrote the mythos. In the early days, in 1938, when Superman first appeared in Action #1, and then he got his own title in 1939. In the early days, Superman did not put the costume on until he was an adult, until he left Smallville. That's when he became Superman. That was the mythos that was very prevalent throughout the early 40s. But in 44 or 45, they sort of retconned it and made it that Superboy actually put the costume on when he was a kid. And that's what Superboy was. It was the adventures of Clark Kent as a boy, as a superhero. And the Superboy stories ran for decades throughout the 40s, 50s, 60s. They were very big, 70s. And it wasn't really until, I think, the 80s when you had the rewrite. John Byrne, I think, did some rewrites of Superman. You had Crisis. And then the things changed so that Superboy was kind of retconned. And when we think of Superboy now, people think of Connor Kent or they think of Johnathan Kent.
That's
but
right.
Back in the old days, it was Superboy and Clark Kent were the same. It was Superboy was Superman's adventures as a kid. And it was it's funny too, and I won't get into this because it'll take too long, but in 1951, Superman came to TV. There was a Superman TV series where even though Superboy had been in the comics for a number of years and had had his own title since 1949, the Superman TV show went back to the notion of Superman not putting on the costume until he was an adult. And it's a long story about why there was that dissonance. It relates to the fact that Whitney Ellsworth was the managing editor of Superman during the 40s, but really wasn't involved in the title. He kind of went to Hollywood and got involved with the TV series. And Mort Weisinger was the real editor of Superman. And Whitney and Mort apparently didn't talk, and Whitney was not aware, I don't think, of all the things that were going on in the comics, which is why the TV series in the early 50s diverged a bit from the comics. But again, that's another story for another time. The big thing I just wanted to convey is that Superboy was a big comic in the 50s and 60s. Another funny thing I'll just mention is that because it was the adventures of Superman as a kid, all of the Superboy stories were presumed to have taken place like 20 years in the past. So if you had a Superman story published, say, in 1958, that a Superboy story, let's say, published in 1958, it was presumed to have taken place in 1938. And the artists of the comics were always making mistakes with little anachronisms, and like they would show pictures of houses with TV antennas on the roof. Of course, TV antennas were very prevalent in the 50s. Every home in the 50s had a TV antenna, but there were no TV antennas back in the 30s. TV didn't become a big thing until the 40s, really after World War II. In the late 40s is when TV started picking up. So those were mistakes that readers were always pointing out. There's a famous issue of Superboy. One of the best Superboy stories ever written was the original appearance of Bizarro. Now, Bizarro later on became kind of a joke in the comics. It was sort of a farce. The Superman stories with Bizarro got to be really stupid. But the original Bizarro appearance in 1958 in Superboy is a classic. It's a very well-written story with a lot of pathos. And if you've never read it, you really ought to read it. There's a very touching account of Bizarro's relationship with a blind girl named Melissa. But again, I'm getting distracted. I won't get into that. The funny thing that happened at the end of that story is that Superboy is working with the military, and they try to throw an atomic bomb at Bizarro. Now, again, the story was written in 1958, but it was presumed to have taken place in the late 30s. There was no atomic bomb in the late 30s. The A-bomb wasn't dropped until 1945 at the end of World War II. So that was a major mistake. And in fact, DC, when they republished the first Bizarro story a few years later in Giant Superman #1, I think it was, they actually rewrote the ending of that story to make it a TNT bomb and not an atomic bomb. Anyway, I'm rambling a little bit here, but I just wanted to convey the point that Superboy was a big comic in the 40s and 50s and 60s, even into the 70s. It was really Clark Kent as a kid. I mean, Clark Kent's adventures as a superhero, and that's what that 1949 tidbit was in reference to in that Superman Lois episode 5. I just wanted to throw that out to you. Anyway, I'm running long, so I will cut it here, and I will talk to you later. Thanks.
His wealth of knowledge just amazes me.
I know.
Now, it makes through this entire description, all I could think of is, well, that's what Smallville is it not? They basically made Superboy adventures. That's what Smallville is, essentially. He doesn't wear the suit, but it's young Clark Kent, right?
Yeah. I mean,
cool, awesome stuff, Rick. Yeah, anytime you want to, don't worry, if you're a couple weeks behind, you want to just do a little catch-up message to us, that's totally okay by us. Don't ever worry about that. Next up, Harley, what's this Twitter? We got a direct message, and that rarely happens. So again, this one was also left behind because I don't think anyone ever direct messages us on Twitter. And we got one in from Rebecca Hodge. What did she say?
Yeah, not very often. So she said, and this was about episode 6, Fantastic episode, moved everything along beautifully. So many amazing emotional brothers/father and son scenes. Clark's monologue about his powers and the people's trust was brilliant. Lana and Lois team up, and the action scenes were top notch. And then this was when we were, we had announced that we were, doing a drawing for our prize, and so she had kind of gotten missed from the drawing, so we wanted to, make sure to feature her feedback, and we've kind of reached out to her on the side.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we trying to make amends behind the scenes.
Yeah,
that we missed her.
Yeah, we don't often get Twitter DMs like for feedback because usually, we usually get people to email us the feedback, but every once in a while we do, so try and stay on top of that one a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. All right, awesome stuff. It's fun to get feedback, even if it is not in time for the show. We still are going to talk about it. So let's get into our general impressions and ratings of the show, and I think X-Force, you are first this week.
Yes, indeed, and I gave it 9.5 kinetic hammers.
Woo!
Wow, what a great episode. I love the twist they threw in there with the stranger being John Henry Irons, the insight into why he's fighting so powerfully. I just can't wait to see where they go with this story, and David Ramsey really brought it in directing this episode. It was just so cool.
Yep. I am right there with you because I also gave this 9.5 Men of Steel.
Wait a sec. This isn't a dream of yours, is it?
What? Oh.
You want 9 Men of Steel?
No. That is very funny, though. Very clever, Flash. I thought this was a really great episode. For me, it was really well paced. It answered a lot of questions, and I was not expecting overt multiverse reference in the show, but Lois confirms it, and then of course we keep getting the stranger's backstory, which is very clearly on another Earth. So I am very intrigued and ready for more.
Totally, guys. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Although my rating isn't as high, I'm giving it an 8 heavy hammers of steel, and I'll get to the 8 in a second here, but holy reveals Batman. Twists and turns and name drops, oh my. I did not think we would get reveals like that this early in the season, let alone get a ton of background for Luthor and all of those flashbacks. Yeah. They spilled the cup on this one, and it just breaks the season wide open now for where they might go, because they gave us what we thought were going to be season-long questions and mysteries. They gave us all the answers, and I was like, whoa, okay, now where are we going to go? And I mean, I got a lot of points. We'll talk about that as we go. And the only reason I dropped it down a little bit, and there is one, I do have a very small kind of nitpick as we get to it. But yes, I agree with you. David Ramsey directed the heck out of this one. The action and the connection, all that stuff was great. But what I thought it lacked a little bit was the emotional beats this time. It was heavy on story and reveals and everything being put together, but I didn't get emotional about this one. I was constantly in shock and whoa and wow, that's cool, but nothing really got to me inside and made me go, oh man, this is like it. There's a nice scene with the brothers, but it just wasn't as strong emotionally as the rest of the episodes have been, and that's why I dropped it down just a bit.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Totally.
Awesome. What was that, Harley?
I said totally get it, yeah.
Let's get to our talking points, and I think we're starting with Clark tonight.
Yes. I tend to keep the characters in the same order because it's just easier for me to organize the notes. So
sure.
We always start with Clark. It's called Superman and Lois. Anyways, all right. So I only have like a few points about Clark. I'm just going to say up front, a lot of the bigger stuff throughout this entire episode really all happened around Luthor/John Henry Irons. So the bulk of our discussion about those scenes will kind of come there. But as a first kind of point with Clark, for me, I loved seeing him team up with Lois throughout the episode. They were, it was almost kind of like, not like buddy cop, you know what I mean? But I love them like working together. And so that was a lot of fun for me to kind of watch them team up and be partners.
Well, I think the feeling you're getting, not buddy cop, but buddy reporters, because that really brings it back to the movies. The original movies with Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder when they're both covering stories at the Daily Planet together. It gave me that nostalgic feeling, you know, even though we're in Smallville and not in Metropolis, it's still the two of them working a story together, and he's got her back and she's leading the story. Like it made me feel like we were in the movies, and I loved that part of it. I was like, wow, this is what a very quiet way of paying homage to the old movies. It's cool.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, you see them as a team being parents, and now you get to see them being a team in this aspect where she's taking the lead, and then he's kind of taking the back seat, and it just worked. It really did. I loved it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, but it was kind of interesting for me because most of this episode, it was almost like he was in more of a supporting role, kind of until the big confrontation at the end. And so, that was kind of a bit of a reverse, because usually he's the one who's sort of taking the lead. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and to me that's cool, because each character is so strong in the show that Superman doesn't always have to be the focus. We have such good characters, such wonderful actors, that they could all take the lead for an episode and it won't even miss a beat.
Yeah. Totally agree.
I think you have this later. I just want to touch on it because it was in the Clark section. But I loved the moment in the kitchen when he was teaching Jordan with the dripping water, which I thought was cool because it really focused in on what the hearing was like for them. But did you guys notice that there was a new take on his supervision when he's in the truck and him and Lois are trying to catch up to Irons? He could look miles down the road like a telescope almost. And we've never seen that visually represented before, that's how Superman's eyes work. And I thought, whoa, okay, that's a new take on his eyes. So we knew he could see really well. Like, if, you know, from the sky, he could see someone on the ground, what color shoes they're wearing, but we've never actually visually seen it. And I just thought that was cool because they were not even close. And he could see way miles down the road, and it was cool. It was a neat representation.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought it was a cool effect. I liked when they did that for sure. It looked super neat.
And I'm gonna stop here. The cinematography and the effect of him flying into the fortress in slow motion.
Oh yeah.
It was just so amazing. Just, he's got the heroic stance and he's carrying his son in, and you see him fly in, and then it just kind of slows down. It was just amazing to see that. So it was just cool.
Well, and what a great scene to open with, because it takes place seconds after we ended last week, and it ended that emotional moment for us. And I like that scene because he drops him he finds a cave or something in there, and he says, "Here, this is a lot quieter. This should help calm things down for you." Because I guess it's very soundproofed in there. And then he goes to the podium thing there, and he's asking, Jor-El about what's going on with him. And I love that little interaction where we get some information about, his hearing is developing and this and that. And I was waiting for them to say something about it being, well, he's only half human, so but they didn't give us anything yet. So I'm still holding on to that theory it was cool. It's neat that they do bring Jor-El into it every once in a while.
Yeah, no, I agree. That half-human thing, that's going to come back up later. I know I have some points on it. All right, well, let's we'll get back to Clark's story a bit later. So let's jump into Lois for a minute here. Now, I know we say this every week because we literally say this every week, but I really love seeing her work the leads and the story as a reporter. It was just so enjoyable, especially this episode, because I felt like it was even more fleshed out. Like, she had more of the leading role than Clark did, so everything she was doing was a lot more prominent, I felt. And so we really got to see her process as she works these different stories, trying to figure out what Edge is up to, trying to figure out what, I'm going to call him Luthor/Irons throughout this whole thing, just to warn you guys, I'm sorry. But she's trying to figure out, what his deal is, kind of all at the same time. And I loved seeing the thought process and just the process in general. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was great to see her skills and expertise, the things that really make her a great reporter, and how she knows how to pull in help when she needs help in areas of expertise that she either doesn't know enough about or needs access to, like how she got Clark to take the case to the DOD so that they could look up the fingerprints, and pulling in her editor in, Chrissy to get some more info. That she's not a one person knows it all. She realizes she has to have those sources and those helps, and I just really loved it.
Yeah, exactly. What did I say last week? Exactly. That same thing.
Exactly.
The show knows how to write an interesting reporter that we want to follow. As you said, as I said, they show us the process. And you know what? If they're doing really well with it, then we're going to keep highlighting it because they are doing really well with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel like we got to see more this episode for sure. I know, and I'm right there with you. Like, I love it. I love getting to see the process, and it's especially when it's really well done. So,
yeah, it's just the Bitsy's version of Lois is reminding me of Margot Kidder so much. Just the nuances of her being. This is why she is the number one reporter in the country. And we're seeing it. And I love it. She's really bringing it back to life.
Yeah, very, very true. Now, I really liked the scene in the car where I think it's after they have the X-Kryptonite, where she's trying to tell him, hey, you need to take this to the DOD to get fingerprints off of it, because I wasn't even really thinking about that. So it just goes to show, like, what a great reporter she really is. But I really loved it that Clark, like, just acknowledges it and just kind of, like, says it out loud. He's like, you're really good at this. And she's like, yeah, go. You got to get going.
It's so true. I mean, to have Superman compliment his wife is such an endearing moment, because he looks up to her for her skills and knowledge as a reporter the way she looks up to him as, an earth-saving hero. I love that he keeps her on the same level as him. He doesn't think of himself as above her or superior to her. He looks up to her as well, and she, she's kind of a hero in his eyes for what she's able to do, because he's Superman, but he doesn't have the investigative skills that she has. It's cool. Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the last thing I have under her note, because she's the one who says it, is we get the direct multiverse reference here, and so that made me very happy.
Yeah, it was really good to actually get the reference. We'd seen the article about the picture with Supergirl being cut, due to time and things like that, but it was nice to get an in the show reference.
And there you have it. The show is now solidified as being part of the Arrowverse. And I wonder if that has anything to do with David Ramsey directing this one. He's like, I'm sneaking this in. I don't care.
I like to think so.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that's all we've got for Lois. So why don't we jump into Jordan? Jeff, you take the lead.
Yeah, so we've got his super hearing causing him physical pain. And we hear from the AI Jor-El that it took Clark weeks to learn to focus. And I really love that we are getting to see what it's like for Jordan. And we've seen it from Superman's perspective, who's got this control, but we're seeing it from Jordan's perspective and how much pain it's causing him, but also him really working it and trying repeatedly to try to focus and do it. And so I really, once again, we talked about Clark's supervision. We're getting to see what the hearing is like for somebody who's brand new at it, and I just really enjoyed that.
Yeah, no, I am right there with you. I really enjoyed how they handled it throughout the whole show, because we get these just like little cut scenes with Jordan like throughout the entire show. And so it was great in the beginning. We get to see Clark mentoring him, kind of like showing him the process. How do you start controlling your powers? Like focus on one sound. I thought that was super cool. And I was really worried he was actually going to give up. So I like that they continued to show us those little scenes where we get to see him persisting throughout the episode and trying to figure out how to find a way to just focus on one sound at a time.
Yeah, I'm thinking it might have to do a bit with he wants to so impress his dad, and because he can't get it done in front of him when his dad is trying to coach him, that's what's shutting him down. He's like, I can't do it anymore, because I think he's a little bit embarrassed that he can't get a grasp on it yet. But later on, we see that he kind of wants to do it on his own and figure things out for himself. Because I have this feeling it's because, here's another comment about it, the half-human thing, that things aren't quite working the same as Clark is showing him, and that's what's frustrating. Like the way Jordan is developing is maybe a little bit different than the way Clark develops. So Clark's trying to teach him from his experience, but it might not be fully the same, if that makes sense. Jordan might... He's trying to do what Clark's telling him, but it's not working. So on his own, he's trying to figure it out because he feels it's different for him.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, and I think also you get the whole idea of expectation of, as looking up to our parents and having the expectation and the desire, like, my parents had a 3-bedroom home and 2-bath and that kind of stuff, and expecting that that's what it means to be an adult, but I didn't see them getting there.
Yeah.
And so he's looking at his father and thinking, well, that's where I need to be, and he doesn't know how hard it was for his dad. And like you said, Flash, he's half human, so the experience is going to necessarily be different.
Yeah.
And so I like it. I like how he was able to focus on one sound, and that was Sarah. And he ended up hearing her talk to his brother, and that led to some jealousy. But I like it was on his terms, and so I really liked how that led into him getting that little bit of control.
Oh, yeah. The second that he kind of started to hone in on her, and then you could hear the conversation, I was like, oh, no. This is not going to end well between those two brothers. But what I did like, and I thought it was interesting because it seemed like a different tactic, I think, Flash, kind of like you were alluding to, is he needed to kind of maybe use his emotional attachments to people to hone in on their sounds. Instead of, like, Clark was trying to just say, hey, just pick a sound, any sound, and focus on it because that's what worked for him. But I think maybe Jordan might need that emotional component.
Emotions, exactly. Well, haven't we been saying that? That's where his abilities are coming from. And I think naturally it's what's going to help him hone them in. I mean, you got 14-year-old boys, one that has pretty much no girlfriend experience, not understanding the situation. This kind of thing's going to boil up to jealousy, of course, because it's his first girl that's ever shown him any type of, time. So that's just being a 14-year-old boy. We've all been there. And maybe you haven't been a 14-year-old boy, Jeff, but you've been a 14-year-old girl.
I was like, well...
but you get it. I'm sure you went through the same thing with your girlfriend. So I'm just... And I what you said with the emotions, he was trying, couldn't get to work, and then he realized, oh yeah, I really like Sarah. I'm going to think about her, and then he could focus right in and listen to her, which to me is still crazy. We were talking about this a few episodes ago, the fact that Superman and now Jordan can hear that fine-tuned from so far away, like when Superman could hear Tokyo or whatever that was, I was like, what? That is crazy to me. That means he can listen into the entire world at once, and that blows me away.
Yeah, as soon as he can dial in, I agree. It's pretty crazy what they're able to do.
So I'm gonna see if I can develop that, and I'll listen to what you guys think of me after we get done recording.
Well, then you better become a telepath. No, I'm just kidding. It's so late here. I don't have anybody to complain to. No, I'm just kidding. I don't complain.
But it was interesting, a little later in the episode, we see the Red Sun simulated lamps draining him as well. And So that really, it didn't really affect him until he got out of the truck and into that full light. So we see that his brother was not affected in the same way. So the growth in the powers also means that growth in that weakness to the red sun, meaning the red sun does the opposite of what the our sunlight does, and it kind of saps that. And so it was really cool to see. Yes, his powers are growing, but yes, his weaknesses are growing too.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting development for me, because at first, like, I couldn't tell exactly what was happening, because he kind of just, like, gets out of the truck and then he kind of, like, slumps down, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a very interesting thing. Like, to me, again, because he's half human, I was surprised he would have the same weaknesses and that it would really affect him in that way. But I don't know, I guess if his powers are starting to come alive, then I guess that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, and I agree with you guys, but I'm still wondering, are we 100% concrete on this here? Because I thought there was a lot of noise happening as well, and he's struggling with noise with it. So I thought maybe the noise and the red sun, maybe there's a mix of both that dropped him to his knees there. And like you said, the half-human part, maybe didn't let it get to him yet. I mean, he's never experienced red sun before, so the weakening of the red sun, because the yellow sun gives them the strength and the red sun just brings them back down. I think I had this point later, but it brings them back down to being more human-like. That could just be such a weird feeling. He hasn't experienced that yet before either. His body's developing, and all of a sudden, whew, it's all taken away from the red sun. Like, what is that? And I think there's just too much happening for him right now that he's just going to fall to his knees. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
All right, moving on to Johnathan. I've always appreciated about Johnathan that he is sticking up for his brother, and he is really talking him up with Sarah and making her think highly of him, even when Jordan is being frustrating.
Yeah.
He's not making excuses, but he's really hyping up him and saying, there's a reason behind things, and it's got to be hard for him. But I just really appreciate that about his character, because he's got those feelings, but he's going to stand up for his brother, and I just really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no, I noticed he's getting quite good at covering for his brother. He talks about this towards the end of the episode, which we'll be able to talk about a little bit later here, but. He basically says, I told the truth, sort of. I just didn't tell the whole truth. And I was like, yeah, that's the trick to a good lie. It's always got a grain of truth in there. So, but the other thing I've noticed about him this episode is, I mean, yes, he's still like sticking up for his brother and covering for him, but then like his anger is really coming out and kind of almost getting the better of him this episode, because he's just like, I'm sick of, everybody always worrying about Jordan and it all being about Jordan and, all of that. So I definitely think that he's feeling left out and without getting any more attention like he used to get, like all the attention.
I'm sure that's part of it. There's a lot that he's going through too, but he's such a dang good brother. And I think it's understandable for him to get upset when Jordan confronts him about him and Sarah talking, because they all kind of became friends at the same time. So it's upsetting that Jordan would think Sarah is all his, because they met her at the same time. They came back into her life at the same time. They're like a trio of friends. It's not like Jordan was the only one. So Johnathan is fully in the right to get to talk to her and hang out with her too, because she's his friend as well. So, and I think they've just got to work that out together.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to work that out, because we get that confrontation a little bit later this episode. And that was pretty brutal. I thought it was a very smart and interesting tactic that Johnathan used sound to get the better of Jordan.
Yeah, it was powerful. I guess he knows his brother well enough, but we haven't seen him use his eye blast really because of the sound, but I mean, he's playing with fire there, but it was powerful to see them kind of going back and forth.
Well, yeah, I mean, he banged on the wall a couple times, and it was smart, because just put yourself in Jonathan's place there. What if Jordan got a little bit lost in his control and decided to push him, or even smack him or hit him or something? Like, we saw what happened to his arm, so I think it was Jonathan realizing, uh-oh, what can I do? Okay, and just in a split second, he realized, bang on the wall, because he's hurting right now, and that's the only way I'm going to get out of this. So, yeah, smart move.
Yeah, he definitely overwhelmed him, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, the point I have about Jonathan, for me, where I think he got to stand out in this episode, is he finally gets his hero moment. All the focus has been on Jordan so far for the first 6 episodes, and Jonathan gets to save the day by, number 1, driving the truck, because they don't know how to drive yet. Number 2, smashing it into Luther. And then number 3, picking up that massively heavy hammer with one hand, and then swinging it to destroy the red lights and save his dad. So, yay, fist pump for Jonathan.
Yeah, there you go. That was amazing. That was really cool. So
I agree. It was a pretty great moment. It
would be my favorite scene if it wasn't all just action, but I can't play it. It was cool. He needed that after all these episodes. He needed a moment like that, so I'm glad.
Yeah.
All right, we've got the Cushings. So really it was all about Lana this week, as going undercover to get the scoop for Lois, but it looks like it's going to cost her her soul. She's trying her best not to hurt the people of the town, to get them good jobs and maybe not be guinea pigs, but they're getting roped into Edge's plan regardless. So it's a dangerous game to be playing with for someone like her who cares so much about the people of the town.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It was interesting, and we had speculated about this, I think, in the last episode anyway, but it was interesting to watch it unfold as she basically unwittingly becomes a recruiter for his X-Kryptonite program. And I like that we got the tidbit that Edge actually is interested in Kyle, and he kept pushing, like, really hard. He was pushing Lana this whole episode, trying to figure out, I don't know, like, why she didn't, I guess, put him up for the leadership position. And I felt like he pushed real hard. And I think we have some points that'll come back up here in a few minutes under Morgan Edge. But I don't know. I've got a bad feeling about Kyle. Kind of have a feeling his days might be a little numbered here.
Yeah, well, to the first point about Lana, she's trying to help, and it's going to ultimately cause harm to people. She wants to help Smallville and the people that are struggling, and she's going to inadvertently bring harm to them, which I think is going to really suck to watch happen, because I think it's going to send her into a tailspin of emotional despair when she realizes she was the cause of them getting hurt. And then, yeah, oh boy, for Kyle, he is definitely a candidate for the super program, and that is going to be a tough situation to watch, because if he gets turned and becomes like Leslie Larr and then fights Superman in front of Lana and Lois, oh boy, we're going to have a situation.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Definitely. All right, well, kind of leading into that, let's talk about Morgan Edge. It seems in the past he has chosen like low-profile people who are easily missed or written off, like we've seen in the series, but as ones for his experiment. But, however, with Smallville, this doesn't seem exactly to be the case. I mean, people may be desperate for work, but I think it's going to be a whole lot harder for him to get around their disappearances with Lois and Lana watching. So, it seems like a dangerous game.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you, because I've been wondering the same thing. I mean, he seems pretty desperate to get his program working and like up and going, but Lana will surely notice if these people disappear, and she's going to tell Lois about it. So I don't know. I don't get what his angle is here. I mean, okay, so like, speaking of angles. So he's as he's begging for Kyle to take the job, then he turns around and gives it to Emily, who we saw come in, and essentially she was begging Lana for the job. So, like, I can't figure out if he really wanted Kyle and was, like, pushing to see, like, what he could get with Lana, and when she pushed back, then he decided to go with someone else. I don't know. It just felt like a very confusing situation to me.
That's what I'm wondering about, too, because her friend, Emily, she was way too much of a go-getter, but kind of, like, nerdy and on the weak side of things. So I don't understand how that's what Morgan Edge wants. Unless he wants to, if he sees her as being weak and then he gives her the strength, then she might be so loyal to him for giving her something that she never had. I don't know, but she just seemed way too like, oh my God, can I have a job, please? Like, just too excited about it and not what he's looking for. Or the other angle is maybe because he saw Lana talking to her. We saw that scene where they made eye contact while she was talking to Emily. I wonder if this could be some kind of ploy towards Lana for some reason. Like, I don't know if he knows what she's doing or if he's trying to coerce her into doing more by taking her friend that she didn't. I don't know. So, yeah, that's something left unanswered yet.
Yeah, it definitely is. Now, I put this under Morgan Edge since they're closely related, but I thought we had a very interesting use of Lars' super hearing. I think this, we've seen many of her powers now, and I think that clearly demonstrates that the X-Kryptonite is turning people into Kryptonians if, like, they can get the experiment to actually work. She's shown an awful lot of Superman-like qualities.
She's definitely showing she has many of the superpowers, yeah, and it seems she's the only one so far that it actually works that well, all of them together, so I wonder why she still takes orders, though. This is what I'm wondering. If she is becoming Superman, why is she listening to Edge and letting him boss her around? I mean, does he have some kind of kill switch for her? Maybe? You know, like, whether that could be organic or what, I have no idea, but maybe he's got something on her that she knows she has to obey him, or he can, turn out the lights for her, basically.
It could be, or it could be that she views this more as a partnership than, a underling working relationship, because she's got something that none of the other candidates were able to sustain, and she knows she has value because he's going to want to look and say, well, why does she keep him and is she stable and the others aren't? So I think she's got an edge there. I think it may change.
She's got an edge there?
But that may change if there are other candidates that come through. Yeah. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, it's an odd relationship. That is for sure. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right. Well, the biggest part of the episode and the most discussion, we have saved the best for last. Let's jump into Luther / John Henry Irons. And why not? Because, why not? Let's start with the reveal. I want to hear what everybody thinks about all of this. Luther is not Luther at all. As it turns out, he's apparently John Henry Irons, and now that I know a little bit more about who John Henry Irons is, that does completely change everything. Fascinating.
It totally does, and it took me, I had to go back. I did watch the scene over, because I had to think about it for a second. I wasn't 100% sure, because we know the DOD checked his DNA with the records that they have here on this Earth and came up with their version of Irons. But he's not from this Earth, and so I thought, could he still be a Luther? Because with the Irons doppelganger body, as we've seen before on different Earths, the doppelgangers aren't necessarily the same persona, the same people. They may look the same, they may have the same DNA, but it could, like a Barry Allen or a Cisco isn't a Cisco on the other Earth. They look the same because they've made that. I can't remember what shows did it, but they're like, oh my God, it's you. No, it's not. My name's John. Who's this Cisco you're talking about? Like, a completely different person, but they have the same look. So that's what I thought might have happened here, that because they've matched it versus Earth Prime's DNA, that he's could still be a Luthor. I'm not sure, but I was waiting for a surprise to show us that he is still a Luthor. And then as we watched more, and then we get, I know you got a note here, X-Force, that we do eventually figure out that it is Irons for sure.
Yeah. So he and his daughter, which we'll get to, find basically Lex Luthor's suit and reconstruct it. And right before he goes out into battle with Superman, she says all these things about, the tracking doesn't work and the AI still thinks it's Luthor in the suit and things like that. So evidently we don't know we don't know what happened to Luthor of that world. I mean, it could be the suit's in pieces because he was killed, but I don't know. But yeah, we at least in that Earth, he is not Luthor that we guess. He looks like they're setting him up to be Steel. So in the comics, after Superman was killed by Doomsday, you had the Superman coming up to kind of take his place. You had Cyborg Superman, you had Superboy, you had the Man of Steel, and after he came back, he just dropped it to Steel. And so he basically was a weapons designer. He built armor. He had a hammer in his costume. And so he even in the comics, he was offered a job by Lex, but he didn't take it. But it seems like in this reality, he did maybe at one time work for Lex. But I don't know. But it's setting him up in a different light than somebody like a Lex. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here.
Right, and I think there was a bunch of them when Superman died and all these other Supermen rose up to replace him. There was a bunch. Wasn't there twins? One was red, one was blue. There's like a pair of them that worked together.
Well, that was actually Clark split in two. But that was at a different time, I think. Yeah. I wasn't reading as much at that time.
Okay, so, I mean, it's Steel. It's crazy that they completely swapped all of our theories for this guy, and that's what's so amazing, because nobody saw it coming at all. And that, I mean, what amazing writing to change it like that, and have all of us go, what? Like, it just, wow, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It was a great reveal. It was one that until I had the advantage of our notes and Jeff's research that I was very confused about. I was like, he's the Man of Steel. What? I don't get it. And so that took me a minute. But yeah, once I figured it all out, I thought that it was super cool. Then, of course, after we have this awesome reveal, we go into this epic battle with him and Superman, which I loved seeing. I thought these scenes were absolutely fantastic, and I loved when they cut them with both Lois trying to reach Clark. She's like very frantic and trying to explain what's going on because she's sort of figured some of it out. And then Jordan and John are also figuring out what's going on because Jordan, using, again, I'm assuming more of an emotional connection, kind of like tuned in on his dad and figured out that someone's trying to kill him. And so this was great. The whole sequence, the way it was cut together with the other scenes and his whole family, so good.
That was really neat, with all three scenes working simultaneously together, coming to the same climax, the same scene in the end.
Yes.
So well done. And that's David Ramsey putting that together for you. So very, very cool.
Yeah.
And
so good.
I mean, what we'll do, so if there's some of our listeners that don't know, like you, Harley, who Steel was, we'll post a couple pictures in the Facebook group and show you who Steel was, and maybe you got a link here. Yeah, maybe you can post that link, X-Force, so people can read up a little bit on them.
I had it in the thread, but I'll post it as a separate post.
I read through that link. It was very informative, and I was very impressed. That's why I was like, oh, wow, that really is a cool reveal.
Yeah. Cool. Now, that battle we were talking about, that fight, it only worked for Irons because of the red sun he used, the red sunlight, which to me was interesting because I don't think we've ever seen that before. Like it's not the same effect as kryptonite, or kryptonite actually hurts and hurts Superman. It's like poison to him, but the using red sunlight just reduces his power to make him more human-like. Because on Krypton, they don't have any powers. It's our yellow sun that gives them their power. So when you shine red sun on them, it just reduces them back to being mere mortals. And I don't know if we've seen that effect played out like that before. I don't know if we've ever seen anyone use red sun as a weapon against Superman.
Yeah, I don't know, and I think he has been storing up the Earth's yellow sun to use as his powers for a long time, and that's why he was still able to fight back. Now, he was drawn down, but he was able to withstand that hammer hitting him and not just totally crushing him. Whereas his son hasn't had that much time absorbing with powers. I mean, he's been, basically human up until those powers started manifesting. So I think it's going to be more of a fatigue on him because he hasn't had all those years of absorbing sun. And, that's one of those things where I think it's an effective tool, but it may be if they wore him down a little bit more, it'd be even more. So I don't know. It's definitely interesting though.
Yeah, yet more stuff. I mean, yes, they gave us a lot of answers this episode, but they presented us with new mysteries. This is kind of like Lost. It's cool.
Yeah.
It is very cool. And I think what I like the most about his use of the red sun is it just showed how prepared he was. And I mean, that completely makes sense because we learned through the flashbacks that he's been battling Kryptonians on his Earth. And so he knows exactly what he needs to do. He knows all their weaknesses. And especially because our Superman is very unsuspecting. He's not expecting someone to out and out come after him with the intention of murdering him. And so I felt like he was a very worthy foe for Superman, and I enjoyed the heck out of this.
Well, and that's where he's like Luthor in that sense. He knows the secrets and what can be used to win against Superman. Luthor has that same kind of battlesuit specifically designed to fight Superman. So I think Irons knows that as well because, like you said, he's used to fighting him. And again, it brings me back to that point when Clark breaks into the trailer and we see the little device, mention the name Luthor, and Clark reacts like, Luthor. So that lets us know this version has dealt with Luthor before, but we don't know what the deal is with Lex Luthor in this TV show. And that's making me... I'm very curious what happened to Lex Luthor in this Clark and Lois's world. I want to know more. Where is that Luthor? And what is he in jail? Did Clark win that fight and he's in prison now? Where is he? Yeah.
It certainly brings up a lot of questions, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, the final scene in this big epic thing is when the boys actually come to Clark's rescue, and I loved seeing that. And then they run Irons down with the truck. I was like, what in the world are they going to do? How are they going to stop this guy? And they just straight run him over. So that was hilarious to me. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I really hope he didn't see them. I know he didn't see them coming because they literally ran him over with a truck. So I'm hoping he didn't happen to notice them after the fact, because I feel like that would be a little bit of a dead giveaway of who Superman really is.
Yeah, I mean, I know he put the hammer up because the hammer is what hit the truck, not him. That left
right.
that
Okay. And then the energy or whatever or momentum just sort of sent him flying.
Yeah, and it was after that he was kind of looking up though, looking around. So did he look up at the truck? Were the headlights on? Could he see past that and see that the boys were driving? I don't know. And then Lois was also there, which I'm sure he noticed. Is he gonna? He's not a dumb guy. Will he put it all together? Wait a second. Lois is there. There's two teenage boys and Clark and Superman here. if he saw all of that, I'm sure he's going to put it together. But that will lead. I think that I'm going to leave that hang on that point because that leads into what I'm thinking about him in our next few points. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll leave that hanging there for a minute, but we'll come back to it. I want to talk about the AI. These could be some quick points, but she had some serious sass at the beginning of this episode, and I loved it. Maybe don't smash me to smithereens next time. I was like, amazing. Love it. He totally calls him out. And we get, I mean, so we learn a little bit more kind of like about how she functions, because I was trying to figure this out because we're kind of used to like a Gideon type of AI that sort of like gets to see everything. But we kind of learned that she doesn't really see per se, but she can access cameras, she can record things. I mean, she knows that Clark broke in, and she plays back the recording even if she couldn't tell like exactly who he was. So it's a really good thing he didn't end up using any of his powers in that trailer, because that could have been bad.
Yeah, I mean, she can't sense who is who when near her. She just senses it's like a proximity alarm. Oh, somebody's here. It must be, who else is going to be here other than Luther? So, you know, I mean, she even thought Clark was Luther at first. So,
yes.
Yeah, and my nitpick's coming up as you guys continue this chat. My nitpick's coming up.
Well, and there's two things I want to bring up. One is, I think the reason she doesn't have access is because she was part of the suit.
Okay.
And she's detached from all those sensors that were in the suit, because that's my thought of why she doesn't have as much. The other point I wanted to bring up is the actress who is voicing the AI is Daisy Torme, and she is a video game animated series voiceover artist, but she's also the daughter of Mel Torme, the singer. And so her mom is Jeanette Scott, who's a British actress, and so she's got some background there. But so it was just interesting. I was like, that last name looks very familiar, and I was like, okay, she is Mel Torme's daughter. So
nice.
Cool.
But the interesting thing is Luther/Irons does not know Clark is Superman. So that's we speculated, but that it's not known, at least before the
That's
conference.
true.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that. Oh, it's just Lois's husband, and he then proceeds to think that it's just a jealous checkup kind of thing. Clark got lucky there, but in all honesty, and this isn't my nitpick, this is just a question. How does this Irons guy, with all his knowledge from his planet, not recognize Clark as Superman? Did he not know that either on his planet, or did evil Superman never have the Clark alter ego?
Well, I don't know. I feel like I can go both ways on this. Like, I kind of feel like Superman, was known to Superman like he kind of is on our Earth, and that, his secret identity, remains a secret, however dubious it is that a pair of glasses conceals his identity from the entire world. It's a comic book and it's Superman, so we kind of hand wave that away as fans. But I can also see what you just said is that he never adopted the Clark persona ever, and we just don't know enough. I don't think
we don't know enough.
Yeah. There's been other iterations in other realities where Clark, he was never Clark. He was just straight out. He was either captured and taken over, by different people. There's, the alternate reality. One of the cool tales that I have in book form, an Elseworld annual, is he got adopted by the Waynes.
Oh.
So he was actually Batman with Superman's powers. So, who knows?
I'd like to read that.
What? It was a pretty cool one. But we just don't know yet where they're drawing and what the reality was for him on that Earth yet. So we've just seen through John Henry's eyes, but we haven't seen enough so to give a clear answer. So
Agree.
Yeah, so we brought this up. The suit, the suit was Lex, and the AI still thinks he is Lex. So that's very.
This is where I'm bringing it in, guys.
Form of water.
To me, I find that really strange. This AI is a super futuristic computer from another world. How does it not detect differences in people? Like it will surely have DNA matching, voice recognition, body type, whether it's body heat or body or whatever. It would have something to recognize that this is not the same person. That's my nitpick, and I'm okay with it. I'm not angry at the show for it or whatever. It's just something that's boggling me, how this AI cannot tell the difference between people. With it being such a supercomputer, it should have some type of sensory thing that can pick up on that. That's a little hand wavy for me. That one I'm having trouble fully waving away. I'll just see where they go with it from now.
I'll give it to you. I don't have a good rebuttal for that. I just sort of took it at face value and moved on and just was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's a very, very valid point.
Well, we know that we've seen that he and Lois are married, but in this episode we find out that they've got a teenage daughter, affectionately called by her dad Natbug, a.k.a. Natalie Irons, according to IMDb, and the actress is Taylor Buck. So that was very surprising to see that they had a daughter.
Yeah, another twist. And then I looked up the Nat character just very briefly, and I don't have any more details. Maybe we'll do some research and post on the Facebook page. But apparently Natalie develops powers as well and becomes some type of hero fighter alongside her dad. Ooh. So I wonder if the show will show us something. I mean, it's obviously flashback. She might not even be alive. I don't know. Well, that leads into our next point, but interesting.
No, I am 100% with you there. That is fascinating to me because my biggest question that came away from this episode was, what do we think happened to the daughter? Like, is she still alive? They very clearly within the episode, Flash alluded to her wanting to fight alongside her dad. Now, we never got any closure, never got any answers, never got to see it. We see him leave. So, I mean, is she still alive? Was she gone after Crisis when things all kind of changed? Was this pre-Crisis, post-Crisis? Probably doesn't even matter. Or was she killed by Kal-El? I have so many questions, and I want to know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering about, too, because before the point that we just talked about, I first was thinking everyone is dead, because didn't Luthor say that when he first arrived, or Irons, I guess, when he first arrived here, that he's the only survivor? When he showed up in the metal suit as the Stranger, and he was having the whole bad guy monologue while he's trying to beat up Superman, he said he was the only survivor from his world. I'm pretty sure he said that. And that would mean that Nat is gone, which leads to why he wants revenge at all costs, no matter what Superman there is. But if this Natalie ends up being a similar story from the comics where she has some type of powers, maybe he just thinks she's gone, and maybe she got into the fight and is there alone fighting the evil Superman, and she doesn't know where her dad is.
Yeah, I don't know. He's sitting on the bench there in his cell at the end, and repeatedly hearing his promise that he'll be back. Yeah. And so that makes me think, to me that leads me, okay, she was a casualty. But now that you said that, Flash, about he thinks she's gone, it could be, and it could be that it could be that she is found by Superman or one of the other, faux Kryptonians and turned into one. in that reality, and he doesn't know it because he's been too busy.
Yeah.
We just don't know. I love it because it brings up so much to speculate.
And we love that on these TV shows. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, that's why we podcast. We have to figure these things out. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about.
Exactly.
Because we don't want to be simply a review show that just tells you what happened in the episode. That's not what our podcast is about anyway.
No. Well, we've got more questions because, I mean, that was a huge question for me. But we get to see a lot of Iron's world throughout this entire episode. And as they keep showing us each scene, it kind of just gets a little bit more disturbing than the next. So let's pick apart a couple of these points with his backstory, because it leads me to one overarching question at the very end that I'll pose.
Well, first, let me just say that I loved all of his backstory. I was surprised we got so much. I thought that was going to be the underlying story arc for the entire season. And like I said in the opening monologue, where do we go from here? I love that we got this much. It's almost like a mid-season finale kind of story arc. And now we're going to take off. I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, let's go through some of the points.
This is actually pretty close to a mid-season finale. We have 15 episodes, and this is episode 7.
Yeah.
We're about as halfway as we're going to get.
True.
Definitely. So Superman has other superpowered friends to help him destroy the world. And at first I'm thinking, are they Phantom Zone Kryptonians that he's freed? But no, it looks like they were Edge's army, because, John Henry brings up that Morgan Edge is part of the issue.
Right.
And so if Morgan Edge was not involved in his world at all, then he would have no reason of caring about Edge. He'd go straight after Superman. But it seems like that the Edge has some type of end in this. And so... And going through this and figuring it out, when I watched it, it was hard to tell because the scenes were from the perspective was from a far distance. But even at that viewing point, they all actually looked like Superman. So I thought clones for a second because they all looked the same. And but do we know for sure who they were? We don't. And Edge's army makes sense. Well, I mean, it obviously makes sense because that's why Luthor would want to be here on our Earth and help stop the same thing from happening here, because he already knows what Edge is trying to do and he wants to stop it from getting that far. So it makes sense. Yeah. I did, on my second watch, I had it on my computer monitor, and so I was able to be a lot closer to the image, and at least one of them was a woman. Okay. You could tell. Wow. So it wasn't just, they may have been in the suits and had the capes, the dark suits and the capes, but at least one of them was a woman. So, who knows what Edge did on that reality, of how he got his people. I mean, they may be more clones, but I don't know.
It is wild, and I hope we keep getting more flashbacks.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, agree.
Yes. So in this reality, Lois is a TV reporter as opposed to a newspaper reporter, but
still a reporter.
She's a
reporter. Same Lois, no matter what planet you're on. Lois is going to be Lois.
Yep, she's going to do her own thing.
Yeah, and she's breaking the story that these Kryptonians can be hurt by kryptonite, and Superman finds out and kills her.
Oh my gosh, that was nuts, X-Force. I didn't think we would see that, but it gives so much understanding to Luthor's behavior, and we have to really think. This is the point I was hanging on to. Is he that much of a bad guy? I, myself, don't think so, because if he is Steel, he was a hero after all, and we know that these TV shows like to tweak the stories a bit so they're not so predictable as what we've read. But I threw my money down on it last week. We brought this up, Harley. I said, I have a feeling he's going to end up helping Superman on this show against Edge and his powered army. And that's what gives this character of now Irons so much depth, because we all thought one thing, and it turns out he's not. And now that we got all this backstory through flashbacks, it provided so much clear vision on who he is and what type of person he is. And he is just trying to save a planet. He's trying, yes, he's a little bit upset. He's maybe getting revenge for his family. That's where he's seeing through, some tears basically blurring his vision. But I think if they can clear that up and get him to see the real deal here. I mean, he had that question at the end here. He asked Lois, do you trust him? And she said, with my life. And he said, I thought you were going to say that. And I do want to talk about that point there, because what do we think when he says, I thought you were going to, that's what I thought you were going to say, did he take that and accept it? Or is he like, yeah, she doesn't obviously know what Superman can be, so I'm going to have to, I don't know. Are you guys with me? Do you think he's going to be a good guy? Do you think he's going to side with him? Or do you think he's still blinded by revenge and still going to try to stop Superman as well as Edge's army?
So my thought is this. It is going to take him fully realizing that Lois is is Clark's wife, Kal-El's wife, and seeing that, because I still hold out to this point we brought up early in the season that the Superman on that world did not have a Lois, somebody to ground him, somebody to be there to pull him back like we see her doing in this episode. And so I think it's going to take that point of him realizing, okay, I know what Lois meant to me. I know the relationship that we had on my Earth and how much that meant to me. Seeing that relationship between the two of them is going to make that turn, but it's not going to be until he fully realizes it. So at this point, it may be, okay, she trusts him as a protector or whatever, but I think that's where it's going to lead to. But that's my theory.
I think that's fascinating, and I love all of that. Because I agree with you. I don't think that Superman had a Lois. He didn't. I don't think he necessarily even really had anything. I'm even wondering and debating, if he wasn't really Clark, maybe he didn't have that persona, then he also didn't have his parents, who also played a really big role. The Kents grounded him, and then Lois keeps him grounded after they're gone. So yeah, I'm kind of right there on the money with you. I think because this leads into my final question, which I know we have another thing that we wanted to get to, but I'm just going to go ahead and bring it up now because I want to know why he turned bad. Why did Superman turn bad on his Earth? And it's all kind of interconnected. If he was never really Clark Kent, that meant he never really had adoptive parents to ground him, and we know he didn't have Lois because Lois was with Irons, and there was absolutely no connection, at least as far as I could tell, between her and Superman. You just get that little scene where they're all kind of watching Superman and the Edge army just kind of come in and start to destroy stuff, and they're like, what is Superman doing? So that leads me to believe that he turned bad at some point and wasn't necessarily bad the whole time. But yeah, it's I want a lot more information than that.
Well, that's what because I was originally wondering, did he turn bad or was he always bad since his arrival? Because have you guys seen that movie Brightburn?
I haven't seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's basically the story of what if Superman didn't arrive friendly. You know, it's the exact same. The kid lands in a meteorite, has the exact same powers, but he goes on a killing spree, and he's just evil right from the get-go. And I was wondering if this might be that kind of story, but you made a good point there where they said, what is Superman doing? Maybe, yeah, but the turning point of him turning bad is, hey, I'm bad now. I'm going to just kill everybody and destroy the world. That to me, I can't think of it as a finger snap. It's got to be a slow burn, a slow change for him to get to the point. I don't know. I'm with you. I need more, because that speculation is, yeah.
Well, the other way they could go with this is he's wearing the black suit. They're all wearing black suits, but we know that specifically when Superman wears the black suits, he's either recently been brought back to life,
and it's healing. It's a healing suit.
Yeah, it's some form of like a healing mechanism. Although all of the supers on Irons' Earth are wearing them, but you could make the argument this is maybe like post like a doomsday scenario, definitely like a different take on death of Superman, resurrection kind of storyline. So that was the only other thing that I was kind of honing in on as a clue.
Yeah, I don't know. Big question there.
Big questions. Okay.
And a smaller point is just I was just wondering, are the scenes that we saw with John Henry and General Lane post what we saw here, or was it in between the time that Lois was killed and they started building the suit? I just don't know. I mean, I just speculation of when those scenes that we saw earlier in the season happen in relation to what we saw tonight. Was it
right? You're talking about the scenes that we saw in the trenches, like a World War II trench, where Superman comes and attacks everybody in the trench, and people are dying like crazy. Yeah,
and kills.
I have a feeling that sequence comes after what we saw this time. I think this was maybe the beginning of the attack, and then the military, got their stuff together and started fighting back, and that's why Superman appears and starts taking them out. That's my guess.
That could track, because Irons pre-Lois's death doesn't have a scar, and post-Lois's death, the scenes with Nat, he has a scar.
And he also wasn't a fighter. Yeah, good cat. He also wasn't a fighter. He was just an engineer working for Luthor Corps, right? And then in those scenes in the trenches, he's in full military garb. So he becomes a soldier. So yeah, good catch on the scar. Wow.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
There you go, guys. Wow. Lots going on in this, and we got 8 episodes to figure it all out.
I know. So much to go.
Cool. Well, let's take that into our favorite scenes.
Shape out an eagle!
All right, going chronologically. You guys picked such 2 good scenes. I had to go back and run through the episode to find which one I wanted to use. And I'm just going to... I'm going to go with one of the ones that I think had the strongest emotional beat for me. And it was when Clark and Lois do catch up to Irons, and they're questioning him, and they want him to hand over that box. And it keeps cutting from that to his flashbacks of when Superman and his army starts to attack. And this is and his memory of when he lost Lois in it. So I've got that entire clip here. For me, that was the whoa moment, is we actually just witnessed that. Wow. So here's that scene. I called it Common Enemy.
If Edge is using X-Kryptonite to build an army, why would he send such a small shipment?
Probably wanted us to come for it.
Well, now that he knows, what's his next move?
It's hard to say, but we need to be ready.
Ready how?
That's what I was trying to tell you earlier.
You want to meet Superman.
It's the only way to stop this.
Dad, wake up! Dad! Dad, wake up! Dad!
Where's your mom?
Coming to you live from downtown Metropolis. Reporting on the scene is Lois Lane.
You want answers? I'm willing to tell Superman everything.
I'm not in the habit of just connecting him with people.
I'm thinking the possible end of the world might warrant an exception.
Okay. But I want something from you. That.
The Kryptonians want you to think that they're indestructible. They're not. They have a weakness. It is a rock from their home planet called Kryptonite. Find it. so that we can defeat them.
I told them not to do this.
And we must defeat them if we are to save humanity. For that is what separates us from them. Our humanity. Mom!
Okay. I need to know one thing first. Do you trust her?
With my life. I love you both.
I thought you'd say that. Set up the meet.
Yeah. Oh, man. When you listen to that, it brings up a couple things, but definitely on his Earth, there is no Lois and Superman connection at all. I mean, she is fighting hard. Find some kryptonite. It's their weakness. Let's fight back because that's our humanity. That's the difference between us. And the way he just flies up and just, like, he melts her for probably 10 seconds there. You could hear his vision going off. Like, there is nothing between them at all. And it's that to me was the breathtaking moment. And, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great scene. It was, like I said, each scene was more disturbing than the next.
Yeah, and the music, again, in this show. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
All right, X-Force, you're next. Actually, you guys are like back-to-back within a second of each other with your scenes.
Yeah, I love the porch conversations between Clark and Lois. This was a short one, but I really enjoyed it. So I kind of pulled it from there, called We Can't Rely on Luck.
Right, here it is.
DOD has John Irons on lockdown. We'll start the interrogations tomorrow.
I should have figured it out sooner.
Lois, come on. You can't be that hard on yourself.
I'm supposed to be this incredible reporter, but I got fooled tonight and someone almost murdered my husband.
It's not that simple. I mean, the guy's from another world.
I still think there's more he's not telling us.
So do I. Which is why John Henry Irons isn't going anywhere until we find out everything he knows.
If it wasn't for the boys, he might have died tonight.
I got lucky. Jordan's hearing clicked when it did.
With everything this family is facing, we can't rely on luck. You're right, Clark. We're not protecting the boys by keeping secrets from them.
So what do you want to tell them?
Everything.
I love that they take time to debrief and truly make decisions as a couple. That this concerns the whole family. They're making those decisions as a couple, sitting down and really thinking things out. And I like, we've seen it in this episode and other episodes, they defer to each other when it concerns one more to the other. We saw Clark deferring to her this episode because it was more journalistic to start with, but they make those decisions together, and I love it. On Twitter, there was a person who put a comment in, and I absolutely loved it. He said, on every other Arrowverse show, does not tell secrets, but our show, we're going to tell everything. We're going to have clear communication. So I loved it.
Yeah.
I think that's such a great point. No secrets.
Yeah.
It's such a novel concept.
It took how many Arrowverse shows for them to figure that out?
Right? I was actually kind of a bit surprised by this decision that they wanted to tell the boys everything. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it'll be a good decision because it will protect them in a way. But now they all have even more secrets to protect. So that's... the boys are already struggling as it is.
But it might actually help them out to be included and feel part of this grander picture. It might, and like, I think Jordan's struggling coping with the power changes, but I think this will help Johnathan because he's been needing to feel part of something and feel important again. So,
good point.
Which calls back to me saying he had his hero moment. So I hope we see Clark, thank him somewhere along the way and say, man, you really stepped up. Like, that's my boy.
Well, I think you're going to get your wish. Because I chose the scene where Jordan apologizes to John, and they kind of geek out over the battle with irons. And then, well, maybe not. You may not have included this part of it. But
I did.
You did? Okay.
The whole
I was
scene,
going to say,
yeah.
because Lois and Clark come in as well. So.
Yeah. I call this one, yeah, bro.
Hey, I wanted to apologize for spying on you and Sarah earlier. I'm really sorry you have to lie for me like that all the time. Actually, this time I kind of told the truth. I mean, not all of it, obviously, but somehow it almost felt worse this way because it was like, I don't know, like intentional. Feels like everything since we got here has just been a big secret. I want it to go back to normal so bad. To be fair, Jordan, I mean, pretty sure normal people have stuff that they're hiding too. Tonight's probably been the most scared I've ever been in my life. But, gotta say, it's also pretty awesome. Yeah, okay, you did total that.
Pretty sick. Bro, I don't even have a learner's or know how to drive.
Which was incredibly reckless and dangerous and irresponsible and absolutely necessary. You both saved my life tonight, so I think I owe you a pretty big thank you.
Listen, we know that you two must have a lot of questions about what's been going on around here.
Like, we've taught you not to keep secrets from us.
So we're not going to keep secrets from you anymore.
Isn't most of that stuff like classified though?
Yes. Which is why none of what we tell you can ever leave this house. Is that understood?
Definitely, yeah.
All right, who wants to go first?
What was that deal with the guy tonight?
See, and actually that highlights what I was saying. Johnathan's like, oh yeah, definitely, yeah, we can keep that secret. Like he wants in.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's a good point. Definitely gives him a purpose.
Good stuff there, guys. It is so hard to not find a worthy quote or favorite scene. Like it's good stuff in this show. Good stuff. So we want to remind you guys of our Patreon and how you guys can help support the show by playing this.
If you'd like to support our podcast, you can do so at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/tomorrowslegends.
Because we had a couple things coming up, we are working on new T-shirts that have a Superman and Lois logo with our mugs joined in that X-Force has been diligently working on. And I think what we had already said, we got an Ask Us Anything kind of session coming up, so all our Patreon supporters can be part of that and really dive into anything they want to know about us. So with that, let's get to feedback. Keep it short this time. All right, we got our very first one is Comic Geek Kev with an email. Take her away, X-Force.
So, have I said how much I love this show? I love this show. I'm so glad the show started where it did with the Kent family lives. We don't need another Lois and Clark meet, fall in love, he reveals his identity, yada, yada, yada. There have been some great stories that came from that setup, and there will probably be more. But taking that to the next logical step after all these years just makes sense, and the writers are doing an amazing job. Yep,
double ditto.
Yep,
yes.
Yep. This show has so much heart, and any great Superman story has to have that. They could have handled the story of Jordan's super hearing as a simple, oh look, Jordan's got a new power. But going the Man of Steel route one of the best, most human moments in the movie, I think makes Jordan more relatable. A kid struggling with these new abilities is more sympathetic than a kid who gets them and knows how to instantly use them.
Yeah.
The struggle to be normal isn't particularly new, but I think they're handling it well. Using the picture of Sarah to hone his ability, which just happened to result in hearing a semi-innocent conversation, was pretty clever. His lack of self-esteem automatically makes him assume Johnathan is going behind his back. BTW writers, don't ruin it by making a CW romantic triangle. Agreed.
Yes.
That led to a great scene between the brothers. Honestly, I don't blame Johnathan for being mad. He really does have Jordan's back. All the scenes with the brothers are so good. I guess we knew, or at least assumed, that Luthor's Lois was killed by that Superman, but that scene was tough. The young actress was great. When they built the armor, the first thing I thought of was John Henry Irons and his daughter, the character of Steel. A very different storyline here by having Steel be a sort of bad guy. Of course, the hammer seemed very Thorish, but it was still cool. But obviously, we haven't seen the last of him or his daughter, who also becomes Steel. Well, in the comics, it's his niece. Interesting. That could be an interesting story if she comes to save him. Wow, that's a good thought. Yeah.
Yeah, if she makes it this way too. Huh.
Very cool.
The effects continue to be top-notch with very few exceptions. I absolutely love this Lois. She's perfect.
And that wasn't X-Force stuttering. It's actually love.
Lana seems to be getting herself in deep. This can't end well for her, Kyle, or her friend. Time will tell. I give this episode 9 out of 10 super noise canceling headphones because mostly I want to leave room for even better episodes. Comic Geek Kev. Great thoughts, Comic Geek Kev. I love it. Love it.
That is a funny point too. I actually laughed to Patty Smith. I said, "Man, those are some damn good headphones. I wonder if they're Sony's or like that."
Right? I need some of those.
Oh man, awesome stuff. Next up, where's this one from? Faith McQuinn.
Facebook.
Yes, it's from Facebook, and she's a podcast creator, and I've known her for a ton of times, but she left it on Facebook.
All right. What's it say, Harley?
Faith says, "This show continues to amaze me. The cinematography, the writing, the acting, it is all beautiful, and I love that we have a seems-to-be villain that really isn't one. Or is he, Faith? Or is he?"
All right. Sidestepping predictability. We don't know what they're going to do.
We don't.
Cool stuff. Good to hear from somebody new. Next up is a voicemail from Perry White.
Hello, Flash, Harley, and X-Force 11. It's your slightly embarrassed reporter here, Perry White, with feedback for Superman and Lois's Man of Steel. And why am I slightly embarrassed, you might ask?
We did.
Probably for the same reason that Lois Lane was slightly embarrassed. I have to give kudos to this show because they pulled the wool over my eyes. I was totally flat-footed about the revelation that our stranger, who we thought was Captain Luthor, was some sort of Luthor, turns out to be John Henry Irons, a.k.a. Steel. All I'll say is, when obviously the AI referred to him as Captain Luthor, all of my theoretical mind basically said, hey, he must be a Luthor, obviously. What kind of Luthor is he? And so, of course, you start going down that rabbit hole and you don't think about anything else. So, again, kudos to the show. They pulled one over on me. I'll be interested to know if they fooled anyone else. And because of that, I'm giving this episode 9.25. They pulled the wool over my eyes out of 10. An incredibly solid episode. Let's just say I haven't had a chance to watch it a second time, and so I had a question, and I'm hoping that either you guys talk about it or someone in the chat may mention it. But when Captain Luthor, a.k.a. John Henry Irons, a.k.a. Steel, when we learn and realize that he has come to Earth Prime from another Earth that basically had been overrun by Superman and his evil reign of tyranny, I was always obviously under the impression that Superman had destroyed either his world or destroyed everything that he cared about on his world. So when we get the flashbacks, which were fantastic, by the way, and we see the Earth that he was on, even in the brief moments that he had with his Lois Lane, I mean, the chemistry that they had on screen was incredible, fantastic. Kudos to the actor and actress for sure in that moment. But my point is, he comes to our Earth to take out the threat, which he reveals is Superman. So again, to realize that his Earth apparently still exists, and more importantly, he has a daughter who's still there. I just thought it was strange that he would come to our Earth to destroy our Superman, which would obviously not have any sort of impact or ramifications on his world. The only conclusion would be that he felt that his world was too far gone, too overrun, so he comes to our Earth at a time when he feels like he can take out the threat of Superman. And then my guess is he'll go back and get his daughter and bring her here. Now, of course, obviously I'll be interested to know what sort of technology they use to do two things. Obviously, how did they get a hold of Captain Luthor's super suit, and how did they come up with the technology to get to our Earth? I mean, obviously, both of them were very smart, very bright, so I'm pretty sure they techno-babbled the hell out of that when they finally reveal it. So like I said, hopefully, I guess that's sort of my theory for that, and maybe some folks in the chat will talk about it as well. I guess we'll see. And speaking of sort of flashbacks and his time on his Earth with his daughter, I really, really love the moments that we got to see with them, obviously dealing with the grief of losing Lois, but just as importantly, the connection that they had in terms of building the suit and tinkering and working on things together. Again, it was just for, like, obviously the period of time that we got to see them, but those characters felt like they had depth to them, like they had emotion to them, like they were alive and not just sort of acting a scene, and that was just really nice to see. And the reason I bring it up is because so much of his daughter reminds me of a Marvel character who ultimately took up the mantle of Iron Man, and that's her name is Riri. She may very well have a last name, I just don't know it, but she ultimately goes by the hero name of Ironheart. And again, she was incredibly smart. She was a tinkerer and engineer as well, and either she got a hold of some Stark technology or she reverse engineered some Stark technology to make her own suit and become her own hero. And I bring all that up to say that obviously when I say when, because we have to, when we get an opportunity to go back to John Henry Irons' Earth, I would love to see more of his daughter and what she's about, and ultimately how she can become heroic in her own right. So I'm incredibly looking forward to that. one of the last things I wanted to mention was, I know, and I don't know if we've talked about it so much in our group, but obviously there's been a lot of discussion about it in social media and other places about the fact that this show doesn't really have any sort of overt connections to the Arrowverse, whether it be in terms of mentioning characters or bringing up events or anything along those lines. They haven't really done that, and I'm not complaining because I think the point of the matter is make a good show, and they've incredibly done that. And you don't always have to bring up references to other things, in my opinion, to do that. But I say all that to say this. In terms of a connection to the Arrowverse, I think this episode, and truth of the matter is, episodes up until this point have sort of shared a connective tissue, a DNA, if you will, with the Arrowverse and Arrow in particular, because of its concentration, because of the show's concentration on family. Obviously, going back to the first season of Arrow, obviously Robert Queen had to die because that serves the narrative. But the point of the fact is, there were family members on this show, there were adults on that show, and family was incredibly important, and it was a through line. And you see that on Superman and Lois as well. So I think that's one way that it connects to the Arrowverse. Another way, obviously, is with this episode, we see how masterfully they did the flashbacks, and obviously on Arrow, it was sort of flashbacks that helped tell the hero story. In this particular flashback, we get to see the antagonist story, and I'm not necessarily calling him a villain because I don't know what his ultimate turn will be. But the point I'm trying to make is the way they crafted the flashback, the story that they got to tell with it. Again, it provides another connective piece to Arrow, and that's a really good connection to the Arrowverse. So while we might not have name drops and references and those sorts of things, I think the important things that connect it to the Arrowverse are still there. So I certainly appreciate that. I think that's it for my feedback. This is Perry White. I'm going to sharpen his pencil and work on his reporting skills, and hopefully the show won't pull too many more surprises on me that I don't see coming. But I must say, surprises are fun, and if they're going to be this great and this incredible, keep pulling the wool over my eyes. This is Perry White, out.
I think we all agree that it's good when they come out of left field like that and surprise us with something so good.
Yeah,
definitely. I have to wonder, though, there, Mr. Perry White, if I'm not mistaken, didn't he tell us that he does all this feedback recording on his way home, on his commute home? So if he's driving and he has a lot of thoughts going on while he's driving. I don't know how he remembers all that stuff about the TV show while he's focusing on the road.
Yeah.
You'll have to tell us how exactly. I want you to be safe out there, bud. The only point I want to bring up is going all the way back to his talk about Luther Iron's planet and whether he left his daughter behind or whatever. I'm really starting to think that we're only going to get flashbacks that planet is destroyed. Whether it's because of Superman or what we hypothesized in the very first episode is it the Crisis? Is that one of the Earths that got destroyed in the Crisis event? And because he says something. He says, I'm the only survivor of my planet. I thought he mentioned something about the Crisis or the multiverse. He mentioned something. We might have to rewatch that for the first time we see him and get his line of what he says, because he basically gives us the answer when he says, I'm the last survivor, blah, 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 and I can't remember what that was.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We'll have to look at that.
Yeah, I hadn't remembered that little detail, but yeah.
Cool. Awesome stuff as always. Next up is Dreamweaver.
Hello, Flash, Harley, and X-Force 11. Dreamweaver here with feedback for Superman and Lois, Episode 7, Man of Steel, which is just an excellent title with double meaning for this episode. I mean, really, this one was great. 9.5 for me. I don't even have a clever rating. I'm just happy. Secrets breaking wide open, plot lines starting to converge, more background on what happened on the other Earth, and just a fantastic reveal of who Captain Luthor actually is. And all directed by our very own Diggle, David Ramsey. I'm just going to start with that reveal. Captain Luthor's not a Luthor at all. His AI was just set for Lex. But he's actually John Henry Irons. Man, I was so happy to hear that name come across, and especially in conjunction with seeing him use his hammer. John Henry Irons, otherwise known as Steel, made his first appearance in the comics after the death of Superman's story, and during the storyline of Reign of the Supermen, introduced as one of the 4 Supermen that attempted to live up to Superman. And he went by Man of Steel, hence the fun double meaning for the title of the episode, but eventually just shortened it to Steel. Superman himself gave him that name. There's even one of the animated DC movies, appropriately titled Reign of the Supermen, where John Irons is actually voiced by Cress Williams. He's a hero in the comics, and now with this reveal, I'm hoping we get to see him come to accept the Superman and actually become an ally. I think that would be a really interesting dynamic if they go in that direction. And I'd also like to see more of what happened on his world, because those flashbacks were really compelling. And getting to see that he has a daughter. I think this split sequence of him and his daughter building the suit, and him setting up the Red Sun rig, honestly was my favorite part of this episode. And with those flashbacks, it looks like the Morgan Edge of his Earth succeeded in creating his resurrected Kryptonian army, but did something to turn Clark, and now the same thing is happening on this Earth. And I only noticed this on the second watch, but when Superman is going all heat vision and walking toward John after he's thrown into the boxes after the boys run into him, it kind of glitches, and John is actually seeing Superman in the black suit. He's seeing his fear from the other Earth.
Right.
I thought that was a really cool detail.
Right.
And now everyone is in the middle of Edge's plan. Edge is having Lana recruit people for the experiments under the guise of a leadership program, and Lana knows and was just trying to protect her friend, and Kyle too. And now she's just stuck in this really compromising position. And Leslie's looking pretty stressed, as though she's waiting for the "your services are no longer required" shoe to drop, and is actively overcompensating to prevent that from happening. I feel like she could become a bit unhinged here in the next few episodes, trying to make up to Edge. I'm just seriously enjoying the production value of the show. There was this one low-angle, silhouetted shot when John hands over the case of X-Kryptonite to Clark and Lois that was just so nice. And the color grade for everything is great. The use of shadows and light in the show, the special effects, just all around good. And I love the added effect with Jordan's superhearing, with pumping in sounds from all over the globe. Like the police sirens from Paris, there were tropical birds and animals, airplanes. That was a really nice touch. And no one is keeping secrets from each other to cause unnecessary drama. All of the drama is coming from the organic plot points and organic human reactions and feelings. It's coming from a parenting decision of what to tell and what not to tell. And this episode even ended on an open book conversation. That's just so nice to see in an Arrowverse show. So, great episode. I am so interested to see where all this goes from here. I'm just so happy that we are getting more DC characters and story element adaptions and being able to explore those in new ways. So, until next time, your "Did I mention I was happy?" friend, Dreamweaver.
Now,
right there with you.
You listen to everyone's reaction, and you listen to us how much we love the show. I have one question. Where did these writers come from? These cannot be the same Arrowverse writers.
That is probably an excellent question that I don't have an answer to.
Man, yeah, it's just such good stuff. Well, that is not the end. We have one more email from Dad L. And how fitting is it for Dad L to finish off a Superman podcast? Here he goes. It says, "Hello, Superfam. Another solid episode. I did not see the John Henry Irons twist at all. Evil Superman taking an alternate Earth Lois was brutal. That's going to be hard for our Kents to swallow. How is Irons going to prove himself when he tells them his backstory? I think they'll find his story hard to believe. In the end, I think Irons is going to come around to the side of our super family and will ultimately sacrifice himself for Superman." Oh. I don't know. I think they're building this actor up to be quite a big part of the show, so we'll have to see. Maybe he'll be like the tech guy for the team. Anyway, continues. "After last week, I wondered how much more Johnathan could take. I thought Jordan was going to do some serious damage to their relationship when he became jealous. I thought Johnathan had finally had enough, but they came together to save their dad and patch things up at the end of the episode. At this point, I would honestly like a little more conflict between them. While I like the solid family aspect of the show, I think a little more brotherly conflict would be more realistic. Okay, I haven't heard that one yet. And what's up with Morgan Edge? What was the purpose behind asking Lana about considering Kyle as a candidate, then filling the slot with her friend? Is this some form of manipulation? A ploy to drive a wedge between Lana and Kyle? We shall see. My rating is 8.5. Super Son saves. Dad L, last father of Krypton. That's a good point. Could it be a ploy? Or I'll combine his last two thoughts. It's a ploy of manipulation, I think, to get Lana to say, wait a second, I think Kyle will be way better for this position than Emily is. So why don't you take Kyle and we'll say sorry to Emily. Could be manipulation.
That's interesting.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, I can't figure out the Emily angle, so I agree, it's got to be something along those lines.
Awesome stuff, everybody. Thanks, as always, for the fantastic feedback. We love it. We love hearing your thoughts so much. The rest of you out there, if you would like to join these feedbackers on our show, this is what you got to do.
If you would like to be a part of the show, you can send in your feedback to tomorrowslegendspodcast@gmail.com. You can also reach us on Twitter @tomorrowslegends. We'd love you to join our Facebook page at facebook.com/groups/tomorrowslegends and become part of the community.
All right, so remember, everybody, there is no Legends next week, right? Or this Sunday, I guess.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll have to wait to get back in your ears for next Thursday. Superman plays on Tuesday, but we record Thursday nights, so a week off for Legends. But yeah, I guess other than that, there's The Mandalore. There's Bad Batch this weekend with Mandalore podcast. If you guys watch Star Wars. That's all I really got. Yeah, join the Facebook group, and we will make sure to check Twitter a little more thoroughly. And
yes, I'm usually pretty good about it, but the DM threw me up, so I'll pay better attention.
Yeah, and I must have missed the notifications. I do get anything that happens on the account; it sends me the notification, but I guess it didn't come through. I don't know. Who knows? But we're trying to make amends. I hope we did that. All right. Well, everyone have a good rest of your week and a good weekend. That is all for me. I am The Flash, signing off.
This is Harley Quinn. I'm out.
This is X-Force 11. So say we all.
Tomorrow's Legends is not affiliated with CBS, Warner Brothers, or the CW. We're a fan-made podcast for entertainment purposes only and are part of the Cybercast Network.